Well, good day, my friends. We are at Forest Lawn, Glendale today. I've been here several times, kind of doing stories on famous people that are buried here, but today I'm gonna go around kind of the whole back section and show you some famous people that are accessible. Some are locked in locked away spaces that you have to have a key or be an quote-unquote an owner for, but I'm gonna show you what we can get to. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all begins now. So this one's not necessarily near all the others I'm going to show you today, but it's one of my all-time favorite people. I never bought into the accusations or anything like that. He's one of my all-time favorite artists, and this is as close as we can get to him. They don't allow you in to see his crypt or anything, but this is where Michael Jackson is. And I believe they always have a security guard there. There used to be just tons and tons of stuff here. Now there's just a little bit here. Michael Jackson was a star as a young boy, the Jackson 5, then went solo and became one of the all-time biggest selling pop stars, the king of pop. This is where he's buried. Let's go up here and visit Jimmy Stewart. I'll never understand why he's buried here, honestly. You come right up to the statue of the archer, and he's actually right here with his wife. I don't know if this is a military section or what. Here's Gloria and the great Jimmy Stewart, who's in some of the greatest movies ever. Glenn Miller's Story, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, maybe one of the greatest, if not the greatest Christmas movie of all time. For he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. The reason I say I'm just shocked he's here is because his hometown of Indiana, Pennsylvania was basically like, his dad had the store in town, he was very popular in town, became the big movie star in town. Basically that whole town is dedicated to him. If you go across the street, he's on the walking box talking, telling you can cross. So I'm just shocked he's not buried there. But there he is, the great James Stewart. He used to love to hear people imitate him. He loved it, he said. He's always great to watch on those old Dean Martin roasts too. James Maitland Stewart, he was Lucy's neighbor. And she said he had the most beautiful garden in his backyard you ever saw. Now we're going to pretty much the top, the back top of the cemetery. Now there are two in this section that I've never been to, so we're going to visit them today. Oh boy, this is not one I was looking for, but I'd love to know the story behind this one. It just says factory reject. Well, we found the first person that I've never visited. It's Robert Alda, who was the famous father of Alan Alda from MASH. Robert Alda got his start in vaudeville and then performed in burlesque. Then he became part of Jack Carson's radio program. He's probably best known for portraying George Gershwin in Rhapsody in Blue. He was also in Imitation of Life with Vincent Price. And, of course, like I said, his son was the great Alan Alda of MASH. He also was a game show host in his time. Hosted a show called Can Do. He ended up passing away 2 years after suffering a stroke, for which he never fully recovered. He died in 1986. Sad. Looks like he's buried here next to what would be his, looks like his wife. No, not far from Robert Alden. I didn't see enough space there where it looks like Alan would be buried there as well, so I don't think he'll be right next to him. So right over here, we have right there one of the greatest judges in movie history, Judge Smells, Theodore Konopka, also known as Ted Knight. Ted was great. The world found out and fell in love with Ted Baxter when he was on Mary Tyler Moore's show as the kind of the dim-witted simpleton anchor. He was amazing on there, and then he was on Too Close for Comfort. And I heard this crazy story that one of his co-stars was telling that when she was on like a game show or a talk show or something with the whole cast, she jokingly said that he like tries to touch her and kiss her and stuff like that on the set. And she thought that everybody knew she was joking, and he was sitting there just like embarrassed and fuming about it. Afterward, I guess he kind of went off on her, and she's like, oh, I thought everybody knew I was joking. So yeah, he was truly embarrassed by that because he was not that kind of guy at all. She was saying basically like she was joking and saying that he was kind of like Richard Dawson was on Family Feud and everything, but that was not the case. Then, of course, like I said, he was lovable or hateable, but lovable Judge Smells, the same man that told Danny, who had a dream, well, the world needs ditch diggers too, you know. So, yeah, star of Caddyshack, well, one of the stars, and a lot of great scenes with Rodney Dangerfield. He's got the comedy and drama faces on there on his headstone. And it says, dearly loved by his wife Dorothy, his children Ted, Elise, and Eric, his sisters, brothers, nieces, and nephews, his admiring peers, and his millions of adoring fans. And then at the very bottom it says, bye, guy. And he's right here next to his wife. One of the fun little Easter eggs of Ted's career is if you watch the movie Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, he's the police officer in Psycho. So we're going to go through the Garden of Remembrance. We're going to go to the farther end. Now over here, this wall, and if you look down, you'll notice there's a headstone there. This is Vincent Minnelli, or Vincente Minnelli, who was, of course, the father of Liza Minnelli, husband of Judy Garland at one time, but he was a very famed stage director and then movie producer, director. He did a lot of musicals. In fact, some of his musicals are considered some of the greatest musical movies of all time. There you can see his headstone says, in loving memory of Vincente Minnelli, 1903 to 1986, beloved father and husband, weaver of dreams. You filled our hearts with love, you touched our souls, you made this world more beautiful. Our lives are enriched by knowing you. You are missed, our best beloved. There's room next to him. I don't believe Liza. I think Liza's going to be buried where they moved Judy. I think that was part of the whole thing, was they moved Judy from New York to Hollywood forever so that the rest of her family would have space to be buried next to her. But Vincent Minnelli was famous for Ziegfeld Follies, Meet Me in St. Louis, Cabin in the Sky, Babes on Broadway. He also did Father of the Bride and American in Paris, The Bad and the Beautiful, Gigi, Lust for Life. He won the Oscar for director. He was one of the longest tenured directors for MGM also. 26 years. Wow, what a career. And then, of course, his daughter, Liza Minnelli, great singer, performer, movie star. Used to be a real famed thing in Beverly Hills to go to the abandoned Minnelli mansion. Just kind of left all of his stuff there, his last wife. I don't know what the deal was, why it was left, but people used to go and just kind of go through it and urban explore it for a long time. And then I showed up to do it when I started vlogging, and lo and behold, they were renovating the whole house. They didn't tear it down, they kept the bones, but they were renovating the whole place, so I didn't get to see it. But I remember seeing videos of people going through there and finding calendars and different cash checks and things like that, receipts there with his name on it. Now, not too far from Vincent Minnelli, you just want to take the stairs up, and it'll take you to one of the greatest guitar players in rock history. So right over here, we have Terry Kath and his parents on the right. Terry is on the left. His headstone says Terry Allen Kath, 1946 to 1978. Composer, guitarist, singer. The memories of love he left on earth, all the world has shared. Rare and gifted gentleman whose riches were a symphony of songs for young and old because he cared. Our loved one. Terry Kath was the driving force and the man who started the band Chicago. Started out in Chicago as the Chicago Transit Authority, and then they moved out here to Los Angeles and started playing the Whiskey, cut their name to Chicago, started opening for the local hot bands. Next thing they know, they were out touring, had a record deal, and were one of the greatest bands in the country. He was, like I said, he was the main guitarist, the lead guitarist, the driving force, sometimes singer. I know a lot of people know Peter Cetera. He kind of took over the reins a lot after Terry, but apparently Terry was deciding he didn't really like the path that Chicago was going, where they were very hit-driven. Their managers and people, their label had gotten them to think of everything as a hit, and he really wanted to be a free musician to create great music. And so he was kind of getting ready to leave the band and had started the plans for a solo project. And the night before he was going to start the solo project, he was at his friend's house, and he always had a kind of a penchant for guns. He always liked to have a gun around, was known to sometimes be careless with it, and in front of his friend, he put the gun up to the side of his head and jokingly pulled the trigger, not knowing that it was loaded. And that was the sad ending of Terry Kath. They did a whole video on his life. I even show the house that Chicago moved into when they moved out to LA, and I also showed the house that he unfortunately died at. But man, what a guitar player. So right over here we have leading lady for a long career, Miss Merle Oberon. At the time of her death, she was married to Robert Wolders. So that's Merle Oberon Wolders. She made her name in Wuthering Heights opposite of Laurence Olivier, but she was also a big star in The Private Lives of Henry VIII, Dark Angel, and the Dark Angel actually got her a nomination for an Academy Award. So she was a longtime actress, acting with everyone like Clark Gable, all the big heavies, the greats of their day. And then what's crazy is she was married several times. She was married to Alexander Korda. And when they were married, he was actually knighted by King George VI. So she became Lady Korda. But she ended up divorcing him in 1945 to marry cinematographer Lucien Ballard. Lucien Ballard had created a form of, like, a special lighting technique for her, and it would obscure her facial scars. So it became known as the Obi light. They ended up divorcing not long after, though, in 1949. Now, at the end of her life, she married Robert Wolders, and he was her co-star in her last movie, Interval. and they ended up getting married, and he was, I believe, 33 years, or maybe, no, 25 years her junior when they got married. The scarring that I mentioned actually happened in a traffic accident in 1937, which caused some facial scars, and they thought it would end her career, but she ended up recovering, and then of course that technique was developed to help hide her scars. But some of her most notable things were Wuthering Heights, A Song to Remember, Private Lives of Henry VIII, Berlin Express, and Desiree. Now as we head out of that section, this one's locked most of the time unless you have a key, but I got in there the last time I was here, and located right on the other side of this wall is the crypt of Humphrey Bogart, and a little further back is Mary Pickford. Well, here's our next celebrity, Wally Albright. Right here, Wally had a really fascinating story because as a kid, he started a bunch of the Our Gang shorts. He actually took over as the lead in Our Gang. They lasted, for a couple of decades, just replacing the kids as they would get older. And Wally came in, and he was only there for 6 movies because he was so good that they wanted to put him in regular pictures. He actually got his contract bought out, and he would end up leaving Hal Roach, had a small role in Grapes of Wrath, and ended up going into having like a lot of movies actually. Wally went on to act all the way until 1954, and he was in movies such as For Pete's Sake, The First Roundup, Honky Donkey, Wish Irony, The Case of Lena Smith. He was in There's No Business Like Show Business, The Count of Monte Cristo. He ended up making over 60 movies. Then he went into the U.S. Navy. Then he came out and bought a trucking company and made a ton of money in trucking. And then in 1957, he won the Men's National Track and Ski Championship. Unbelievable. He became a water sportsman. That's why he retired from the acting game. So his parents are this first headstone right here, these first 2. And then Wally is right there. And pretty cool. Of course, his father's name was Wally also, so that's what this statue depicts, the whole family. And all 3 are buried here together.